So, hi, welcome. My name is Tara Kazarowski. I am the Executive Director of Education Programs at a small liberal arts university in Buffalo, New York, called Damon University. So, we are not a U Teach school, but my background is in STEM education and special education. So, I kind of live both worlds. I direct programs of all kinds in my position. Today, I'm obviously going to be focusing on our math and science ed folks for my examples. But today I'm talking about video enhanced reflection using a tool called Vosaic, which is one of the vendors here. So if you haven't stopped by their table after you see things, if there's anything you have more questions about, I don't work for Vosaic, but I have been using this tool since 2018. And prior to this tool existing, I used another tool that they had called Studio Code. So I've been using video coding, video analysis for quite some time. For specific purposes of looking at student reflection in their field experiences and in their courses. So if you want a copy of my slides, you're welcome to scan this, snag a copy. I can also come back to this at the end, but I do have PDF of them. My research context and teaching context, I'm actually going to be talking about experiences at two different institutions where I worked. So prior to being at Damon University, I was the assistant chairperson and tech coordinator at Illinois State University in the just special ed department. Very different contexts of these two schools. I already mentioned that I oversee all of our programs at Damon, where we have a total of 125 students in education on our Amherst campus, and that's across all of our programs, so not very big. The whole university is 3,000-ish, so not very big. Contrastly, the Illinois State University special ed department alone, just special ed majors, not even dual cert, 800 plus undergrad students, plus our grad program. So College of Ed, well over 3,000 students. So the College of Ed at ISU, larger than all of Damon. So very different contexts, but I have successfully used these same procedures I'm kind of talking about today with video analysis at both institutions. We use it for remote supervision. We use it for student reflection on specific practices, and I'll kind of show you that and what we've learned from the process. So at ISU, I'll talk about why we started it in just a moment. But we really started using e-supervision, Vosaic for e-supervision. So instead of going out into the field, someone from the university would normally go into the classroom, observe, debrief, the typical thing you do. We're doing remote supervision using video. And after our pilot study, which had, the information on here, we looked at 471 students over 2 semesters at 248 unique placements. We did surveys from our teacher candidates, and we looked at interviews from our field-based supervisors for this first part of the study. We wanted to know, how did using this impact their evaluations of student performance? Now, this is, again, perceptions data to start with. And then how the teacher candidates themselves were reflecting and evidencing their own teaching practices. I continued this work. So I left ISU, moved back home. Buffalo's home for me in 2021. We also used Vosaic there for supervision. And I've sort of expanded this a little bit more. Now I'm analyzing what the students are tagging. So I'm actually looking at their video analysis results. This summer, I've started doing that. You're going to see some preliminary results now, but we're doing deep dive analyzing their videos this summer. So what are they noticing about their teaching is what we're looking at. What are they focusing on when they tag themselves? And I'll explain what I mean by tagging. And then how do our video enhanced debrief? So we take these videos and we debrief with them afterwards. How does that support reflection on inquiry and student discourse? Those are two areas specifically we want our students to move kind of that way on the spectrum of pedagogy.
When you debrief, is that in person?
It's in person or on Zoom, depending on the program. Yeah. So our master's programs are online. So those are usually done on Zoom. Undergrad, it depends on the students and their schedule. Yeah. This is the boring stuff, but just this is grounded in literature. The idea of reflection and video analysis actually is pretty well established. A special ed field does this quite a bit. So there's a lot of research in general on, you might see terms like this if you're looking for research video analysis, video reflection, video enhanced reflection, all these phrases. It's really growing in teacher prep. A lot of the guidance is about how we teach students to reflect with the video, but there's a lot of supporting evidence that our memories alone are pretty faulty. And when we do debriefs that don't have any evidence behind them, sometimes we're not even talking the same language, right? So like I might be referring to something and my student is referring to a completely different event. And then we're kind of relying on our gut reaction as opposed to the actual evidence behind what they're doing. And it's hard when you debrief to really talk about those nuances of your practices. And again, so this is just a little summary. You'll have all this in the slides, but just what we know when we use video to support it, that they are able to notice better, they reflect more deeply, and they improve their instructional skills better when they're using video to support that reflection. From a STEM pedagogy look, when I'm going to focus today on our math ed students, our science ed students, and our elementary ed students who are also going to teach math and science, we're constantly, especially in those fields, we teach pedagogy on a spectrum. We're really always trying to push them towards this right end of the spectrum. Big theme at this conference here. So how do we up the level of discourse, up the level of inquiry, move towards more problem-based and authentic learning? So a lot of times a video can help us talk about those moments. Sometimes they think they're doing it, and then you get there's like, that was really bad explicit instruction. Like they always think that they're doing one of the, they're not really doing any of the good practices, right?
They missed all the opportunities.
Yes, they missed lots of the opportunities. You didn't do explicit instruction well, and you didn't do problem-based learning well either. You sort of did status quo, what we see a lot of in schools. So we're always trying to push them towards that right side. And what I've noticed specifically, especially when we're talking about those 5 practices for math, that the video reflection can help us see that in action, those little pieces, more than a lesson plan can. So when I'm looking at their lesson plan, it's great to say, here's the task I'm presenting them. I'm going to ask probing and guiding questions. Well, you don't know what those questions are until you see what the students are doing. So I can't really evaluate that until I see it in the video and see it in the action. So I'm finding that video is helpful for us looking at that. The whole reason this started, I was using some in my math methods class that I taught. I was using Vosaic just to look at good teaching in math and to talk about different practices. But we really started using it for e-supervision during the pandemic. The bottom line, we couldn't get into schools. In Illinois, at ISU, our students are placed all over the state. And so we couldn't get our supervisors, weren't allowed in the schools. So we moved to all remote supervision. We did large scale, very fast scale up because I already had some licenses and I worked with the company to get more very quickly. And we just sort of worked really hard to get this going. So we use it at all of our levels. We had 3 levels there: practicum, field-based, and student teaching. And we had students, we interviewed people at the different stages. Post-COVID, we had some decisions to make. Do we go back to status quo? Do we just go back to what everyone's comfortable with? I did have some supervisors, you'll see in the results, that they thought, I just miss being in the classroom. I said, you can't get at the same thing with the video. I have to be in the room. And what we figured out, what we sort of talked about, there were more pros to doing this video and remote supervision than there were cons. So yes, you might miss doing those things, but is that essential for your job as a supervisor or as a cooperating teacher in the classroom giving that kind of feedback? Are you looking at the nuanced practices and having debriefs? So we kind of looked at their roles. So we noticed the barriers of the traditional supervision model. You traveling, trying to get to the sites. Everyone wants you to watch their math lesson at 9 a.m. on Monday, and that's just not going to happen. I can't use practicing teachers even as adjuncts because they're also teaching themselves. The timing of that debrief also happening. I've got 2 choices. They watch a lesson and we either meet right afterwards, which means that students on that high adrenaline, we have that bobblehead syndrome where they're nodding their head at everything you're saying. They don't know. They haven't come down yet from that observation. Or we wait till a later date and we debrief then. But at that point, are we even reflecting on the same moments anymore? Are we talking about the same thing if I reflected so long later? And then the biggest piece to me and the benefit to me moving to this video-based observation is the process. You'll see when I describe what we do has moved from a teacher-directed process to a student-directed process. We actually, when we use Vosaic, they record themselves teaching and they get to pick their best lesson. If they recorded it and they go, you know what, that wasn't my best lesson, that's not the one I want to use, fine, record me a new one. I want to see that you know what good teaching looks like. That's what I'm assessing you on, not whether that lesson went perfectly. So they'll record it. They go in and tag and evaluate their lesson before the supervisor ever sees the lesson. Supervisor watches the tags. Then we use the video to support a debrief process.
So you don't watch the whole thing?
You can. It depends on the student. So some students who didn't do it, I start watching the moments and I go, oh, they kind of missed the boat. I watch the whole thing and I'm adding my own tags. So it really just depends on the student, but it kind of lets you scale that out. When we were looking at tools originally, like I said, I was already using this tool, Vosaic. We knew we needed wide scale adoption of a platform. We needed to be able to have self-observation and reflection by students, and we wanted that video guided debriefs. And I'm going to show you in a moment. I have used probably every video big platform under the sun. I've tried Go, React, and Swivel, all of those. And
Tavera.
I've met with Tavera, but what I've learned with Tavera is it does the same thing that the other ones do. So the biggest difference you're going to see between Vosaic and every other tool I've seen is that they all have paused moments in time. So like you might have a timestamp where you can add a comment, right? So that's what Tavera does. Tavera has pause moment, Swivel, same thing. So I can add a tag, make a little note at a specific point. But what it doesn't have is a moment that has any kind of duration to it. So I don't know, am I supposed to watch 10 seconds of this clip? There's no video clip for me to watch. It's like a freeze frame. So I don't know what I'm looking at. What did the student want me to see in this video? So I will show you what it looks like in Vosaic so you can see what the difference is and why that moments with duration was kind of the tipping point for us, why we go with this. Tavera has other features though too. So it's like in one set.
Because I don't know the controller, then I think they're leaning towards.
Literally just met with them about we're looking for an assessment platform, field placement, all those kinds of things. Ultimately did not choose Tavera, but we whatever the other tool we selected, we still are using Vosaic as well, just because nothing else does what this does. So this is a snapshot first of the Vosaic platform. So it looks probably pretty similar to other video platforms. You have your video over here, a lot of functionality here where I can speed up. It auto transcribe, so it'll close caption, becomes accessible as well. And then at the bottom, we have what's called a timeline. So everything you see down there, those are moments that the student selected with duration. I can tag moments. I can have as many people as I want tag, choose who can see them. So sometimes we do this in group projects too, like before they get to the field experience.
So is that a series of different taggers?
Yes. So what this is, this is actually all one students because there's 4 rows on this student. You can't see it very well because that is their initials at the beginning of it. Those are 4 rows that correspond with the 4 button that I created on a customized form. So super easy. You make your own form. We use the Danielson teaching framework as our primary framework. If you're not familiar with it, it's like all the other ones. It's got 4 main areas: planning and preparation, learning environment, learning experience, and then like the dispositional pieces, principle. 4 domains, and in each one there are subdomains. So one of the things Vosaic can do is you can tag a moment in that row and then label them with specific indicators. So we're actually building with students' capacity to provide evidence of each of these pieces. So on when I toggle over from the form to the moments, you can see that this is what the student's writing about on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over to Vosaic. And this is that same student right here. And you can see here right now, I didn't tag this was a student who was pretty competent at writing his own reflections. You can see the length of them. They're pretty, he writes quite a bit about what he does. But I can toggle on, if I did make my own, like I could have my own set of timeline rows down here. I can reorganize them in different ways. Like I can group them by button. So put all the domain ones together. I can compare what I tagged versus what they tagged. We do that in class projects all the time, actually. I have all 25 students tagging the same video. They don't see each other's until I turn it on and we look at what is everyone noticing in the video the same. So we do that a lot together. But just to give you a sense, when I am the supervisor, so this student submitted, this is placement 1, lesson 2, then he gave me permission to use of this. So I take a look first and there's a lot of ways I can play what he wrote. I can click on the instant. I can go over here to the moments tab. What I like to do though, I click this play all button. And what it does is it highlights what he wrote while it plays the moment here at the bottom. So I kind of watch what's happening. My sound's not on right now, but I watch what's happening while I read their notes. And when that moment, like you can see, it had duration. So he has selected exactly what he wants me to watch there. So you can see some are short, some are longer. It depends on what he's talking about sharing. When that moment's over, it'll automatically jump to the next moment for me, like a video reel, and highlight the next set of things. So for someone who's grading, we do use rubrics and Blackboard for certain things. We're checking how much they're evidencing the different domains, the quality of the reflection. I usually kind of have 2 screens, one with the rubric in Blackboard, one where I'm watching this and I grade it over here. But that's basically the idea here. So I go back in. If I felt like the student really missed the mark, I can add my own comments. I can either tag my own instance or I can add a comment right back to the student. So I can click add a note and I can comment back on what they did here. So then once he's tagged, I've tagged, we have our debrief meeting. We come together and usually I'll mark down which ones I want to talk about specifically, but I usually let them start with the debriefs. I bring it up on the computer. Talk to me. What do you want to show me? Here's some of the things that I noticed, but I want to hear what you noticed first after you tagged everything. Let them showcase some things to me using the video.
Have they seen your comments?
Yes. I usually tag before they, so they can see them. Yeah. This is a student, again, who there wasn't a lot for me to add. There was a lot I wanted to talk about. This is a math ed major, strong student. He was in 2 placements that very much the curriculum, he didn't have a lot of control of what the curriculum was, all very explicit based. So he tried to incorporate, we kept talking about models of inquiry. What is in your control? What isn't in your control? How can we at least amp up that student discourse? Can you build in this mini task in the middle of the program? Because ultimately, that's the hard part with student teaching. If that's not what the school's doing, early in their placements, if they were just teaching one lesson, he was able to do one in practicum where the teacher's like, sure, I'll let you stray for this one lesson for your class. Yes, go ahead and do that task-based lesson. But unfortunately, you don't always see that when you're teaching every day in here. But that gives you a sense of what we were doing with Vosaic. We did this, like I said, at ISU first, large scale, 350 students, 248 unique placements at different times. Then I interviewed people just to find out, what were their thoughts about this? How did they felt? How did they compare to what they were doing before? So again, these are the procedures. I listed them here. So the teacher candidates record a lesson, upload it. They tag first. So notice it's student driven. They do the work first. Then I look at their evidence that they provided to me. It's their responsibility to provide evidence of meeting these domains. If they don't, or if the quality wasn't good enough, sometimes I've sent it back and said, we're not debriefing. You have not looked at this enough yet. I need you to go back. We'll reschedule our debrief. And then sometimes I add my own. Some students need a little bit more love than others at different points in their program. Then we do this debrief conference. Depending on where the student was, sometimes we did through Zoom, especially at ISU, because that was during the pandemic. So we often shared screens on Zoom, called debriefs. At ISU, they added one extra piece. We did the first part with both schools. We had these reaction debrief forms. So after we did the debrief, the teacher candidate had like a little reflective journal where they talked about what their most impactful feedback they got from their supervisor was. So they kind of closed the loop of that debrief meeting. So they have those journal entries. And then at ISU, they took it a step farther. I couldn't get people on board at Damon to do this extra work. We had like a Google Doc Danielson log where we kept track of student tags about their performance. We basically were trying to evidence all the Danielson domains through different sources. So they took their lesson plans, they made note of their evidence there, they did videos, they did cooperating teacher notes. They kept these really detailed logs, and kudos to them for actually doing it. I couldn't get my people at David to, maybe next year we'll get into that, but it was a lot of work. So I mentioned that I interviewed the supervisors and I looked at the student feedback surveys about how this impacted them. So looking at 2 questions, again, how did this impact the evaluation of their performance and their reflections and evidencing of their teaching proficiency? So here are the big themes. Time and flexibility was our first theme. Time was saved for most people compared to the traditional model. There was a little bit of, I went back too far. A couple of people said time was worse. Those were really not, they never used tech for anything. Folks that have been there for 20 years supervising. Learning tech. And especially, so we did this over 2 semesters with COVID. Fall semester, this is when I saw this feedback. By spring semester, those same people were great. So, as good as I could expect them to be. I was still tech troubleshooting with people, helping out with those pieces. It was easier to connect with cooperating teachers because they were driving all over the state of Illinois trying to find a time to get into the schools when they could before. And it gave a lot of flexibility for a supervisor at family who can't necessarily, they had their own kids' events. So now I can do this asynchronously at a time that works for me. And also, students can record multiple times and choose a quality lesson.
Across the state wants somebody and that's a bad day.
Yes. Yep. Or, the student that wanted you to see you interacting with wasn't here today, especially in special ed when you're talking about small class settings for this was like, great, we just scheduled this and now that student isn't here and I planned all the instructional supports for that student and they're not here. So again, this gives that flexibility. they reported having a more objective view of the teaching. They felt more comfortable that they weren't using their judgments as much. I mean, of course, we're using our own judgments as expert teachers, but we're not relying on memory of events anymore, right? We have evidence behind it that we can talk about. Sometimes our supervisors were wanting to, they take a lot of notes while the student's teaching, and they always felt like they were missing something. So now they're not having that issue either, where they're not missing things. This one was really interesting. This one came up by numerous students and supervisors. Students noticed that when they do their own reflection, again, relying on memory, that the students tend to focus on the bad things they did in the lesson. That didn't and they would just get really down on themselves. And sometimes having that video evidence was a nice way to show, okay, so maybe that part didn't go so well, but let's look at the thing that did work really well. Let's look at what you did here. And again, we were able to evidence growth over time. The students could watch. The students who used this tool in my math methods class, which was a little earlier in their program, I saved all those videos for them, and they got to look at themselves teaching when they did a practice teaching there, and then compare it to student teaching as well. So we really were able to document that growth, and they really loved that. The debriefs, they said that the quality of their debrief meetings were just so much better, because now the big context to remember when we're using video, the debrief is happening at a later date because the students take time to look at their video, tag the evidence. So student benefits, they have time to reflect and focus, less emotional during that debrief, right? I don't know if you've done anyone here do live observations of students, but they are often, they've got that adrenaline high. And sometimes they're like, they're top of the world. I did everything right. Or they just think that they've done everything wrong. So it really just gives time to take that emotion out of it and really be analytical. Supervisor also, they can go back, rewatch. They think they can give more thoughtful feedback, basically, when they have the video evidence. Student growth, so a lot of the similar kinds of tools. I don't know about you. I want to highlight here because I just want to have time to show more things. Anyone here at school that do you do NTPA in any of your schools?
Just started.
We did too. So NTPA Task 2, that's the whole video recording thing where they have to put timestamps and all that. One of the things I hated at ISU is that we used this great video tool, and then I was still stuck doing a table of timestamps that were meaningless. So New York just we can keep NTPA if we want to, or you could develop your own. So we developed our own, and we made our own TPA Task 2 using Vosaic. So now the student's job is as many videos as they want to submit to their TPA project have to evidence all the dangers in domain 2 and 3, at least the practicing ones. So it's on them to show multiple sources of evidence of these domains, and that's how we're assessing them. So a lot of good benefits. This one was really interesting too. The additional supervisor notes. They found that some of the students had watched themselves teach, and at the debrief were already coming up on their own with, okay, so I already made this change in my classroom based on what I saw before we even had that debrief meeting. So we're just seeing so much more student-directed learning when they're doing this first. So there were some challenges. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, this is just the easiest thing in the world and everyone loved it. Mixed feelings. Again, some of the supervisors felt they missed the relationship building in the school. So ones that have been there for 20 years. They said, oh, I just miss being able to stop in and seeing the office administrator and talk to them. It's like, okay, but that's not really your job as supervisor. It's great. It's a fun thing to do, but it's not... You would just miss teaching. Oh, you're a retired teacher and you miss being in the classroom. I get that, but that's not a critical step of this reflection process. They miss some in the moment coaching, but again, our role is not really a coach as a supervisor. Our role is more like evaluator. The mentor role of the day-to-day is that cooperating teacher who's with them all day, every day. So we kind of just talked and renegotiated some roles. What is your responsibility as the supervisor versus the cooperating teacher?
So the supervisor is not interacting as much with the supervising teacher.
Correct, for us. And for us, some of them did. Most of them weren't anyway. But it depends on how long they've been doing it. We've already started to see more of a shift away from that. The supervisor from the university, their job is more evaluating the teacher. I'm coming in to look at 2 lessons per placement, right? I'm coming in as an external evaluator of what you're doing, and then we can talk about how it goes. The day-to-day coaching really was never meant to be that person who's not there every day, who doesn't have the classroom contact. That's the classroom teacher who's the day-to-day mentor. So we really just kind of redefined those roles. Yes, what the role of supervisor. Can you still build relationships? We now added at Damon, we added meet and greet meetings before each student teaching placement so that the supervisor, the CT, and the teacher candidate all meet together on Zoom and just have at least a conversation to get to know each other before the placement starts. And I found that helps a lot with the relationships. I believe so. Most of them said after doing it for 2 semesters that they would, even post-COVID, wanted to keep the e-supervision. And I believe they're doing like 90% e-supervision. A few of them are doing occasional in-person visits if they live close. Some of the challenges that were mentioned, it was really important when we were doing this research that we were trying to pull apart. Was the challenges that you were describing actually related to Vosaic and e-supervision, or just challenges of pandemic life in general? And it seemed to be more of the latter as we're looking at it. So like we had a lot of students doing e-learning placements during the pandemic. So like they were literally teaching the classes online as their student teaching experiences, because that's what schools were doing. So like some of the challenges they had, they're like, well, I couldn't see any of the students, they didn't have their cameras on. Okay, well, that was not really a Vosaic or e-supervision fault. That was a pandemic. Kids didn't have their cameras on.
They have their Sonic.
And they couldn't see their faces. You couldn't see, especially in special education. I mean, there were things like when you were in a more like a severe and profound classroom where you rely on physical prompting, that's almost impossible to do. You're not going to be doing that online. It's just not going to work. They noticed a lot more anxiety from the students, but again, it was hard to tell if that anxiety was video recording because we did it in a lot of our classes anyway, or if it was just the stressors of the pandemic that everyone was just high anxiety. So it's kind of tough to tell. Tech challenges I mentioned before, there's a lot that goes into, I already talked about some of these pieces, but I've highlighted some of the key features on Vosaic that why like this particular tool, customized forms, moments with duration. You can set these projects with due dates, so I can have all students upload to a specific project that's labeled a certain way to me, and that I guarantee they have put the right form and the right share settings because I preset that in advance. So it's almost like a little assignment link. And one of my favorite things about Vosaic is they are so responsive as a company. There's a little chat bot on there. And so if a student's having trouble, chat on, there's always someone there to help support them if there's tech troubles. I just want to, I want to just look at the time, be mindful because I want to get to the AI stuff. I have a few, just kind of a few notes here of if this is something you wanted to use, you have to plan in some training. I make a lot of how-to videos for us that are specific to our procedures, screencasts, walkthroughs, and it's really important to build it in kind of throughout the program. You can't throw it at someone at the end of the program and expect they're going to be mastering this skill. So we generally start the scaffolding approach, like at Damon right now, in our early tech lab class, which is like year 2, they learn how to use it. They have one simple button on the form that says, good teaching. I put a video in there and they're just supposed to highlight moments and tell me why they think those moments are good teaching. So they learn how to use the functionality of the tool, don't have to upload something themselves. And then we have something to talk about of our baseline. What do you think is good teaching? What does it look like to you? And then we move up different classes, like our math methods, science methods class will zoom in on specific math practices and science. And so that by the time they get up to student teaching, they've been using this regularly, ready to go. I'm going to leave those notes there for you because some of them are a little bit redundant. And I'm going to switch over to what I've been doing now that I moved to Damon University. Again, the context here, ISU was all special ed majors, all across the state of Illinois. Now I'm at a much smaller school. It's general education programs. And special ed in New York, they're all dual cert with us. So it's also, they're gen ed and special ed. So we're really highlighting, pushing that pedagogy spectrum and the inquiry lessons, which is less common in special ed. So looking at Damon, again, we scaffold it. We actually build Vosaic in. We have 4 phases of our program that we call it at the undergrad level. And we have different ways of using Vosaic at each one. So they start by identifying good teaching. Then we watch videos during field-based other people who give them high-quality lessons that they reflect on. And then they move up to practicum, where they record and reflect on their own teaching. And then eventually student teaching, that's when they're really evidencing. It's their job to say, I've mastered these skills. Let's see here. At Damon, I've tried to take this a step farther now. So I talked about, we did a lot of perceptions research at ISU. Now at Damon, I started digging into looking at what they wrote in their reflections. So we've been doing our analysis on these 2 questions. First, what practices are they noticing? We noticed before we gave any kind of reflection guidance, their reflections were not good. It's like, I don't know about you, and they write reflections, like they would focus on things like, I said so many times here. Okay, like that doesn't tell me anything about your teaching. So we've been trying to give a little bit more guidance, showing some high quality examples and needs improvement examples of what good reflections look like. So now we're really digging to see what they're noticing. And then once we understand what they're noticing, we know how to scaffold it and coach it a little bit better to how do we get them to deeper practices as the next phase. And then specifically when students are submitting math and science lessons, we're really looking for some of these elements. How are they using that video to look at those methods of inquiry and student discourse? Those are, the harder things to see in a lesson plan, more effective to see in a lesson video when I actually see the students doing that. So that's kind of the next phase that we're working into. When we're doing this analysis, I can go right to Vosaic like I showed you here, and I can look at things. But what's nice is I can also really easily export a CSV file, and it literally will put timestamps here for me. So when I'm just looking at the textual analysis, for like my detailed qualitative analysis, I use the text, but I do watch them all first because I want to see that they are matching. Like, does the video actually match what they're writing about? And what's nice is those little tags for the domains, they'll tell me what they tagged them, which indicators as well. Yeah, please.
I know when you like to come in and go on the observations. Sometimes when you just left the classroom, like everything seems important.
Yeah.
Over inundating the student would think they can't fix everything.
Right.
At first order. Do you find that having the ability to stop and pause, or are you feeding off of them doing it first, and then you're just trying to take the low-hanging fruit?
More the latter. It depends on the student. So the student is tagging really high-quality moments, and their reflections are really good. We build off of that. Sometimes I had, like this particular student that I'm pulling examples from, he talked a lot about his student discourse. He kept using the tag that was about student discussion. And I was like, okay, but let's talk about these because you had the same two students discussing for a lot of this stuff. So I used what he tagged as a starting point to say, okay, let's talk about what some strategies you could have done here at that moment. What could you have said instead? Instead of saying, who can tell me, what could you have done instead to get more students talking? So like for him, I started off of that. I had other students who, they didn't really select good moments. So I found myself tagging more things on the video themselves. And then
that's where you have the ability to pause and critique everything and like it.
It's true. We look for big picture. I kind of see where they are. Like, no, not every student, especially if these are undergrad students right here, like they're not getting to master teacher level by the end of their undergrad program, right? We want them to get to entry teacher level is what our goal is. So when I do some coaching of our supervisors, we really talk about what is it that I'm looking for at that point, right? I want them to be able to clearly articulate goals. We talk about what those domains should look like, and we look at big picture things first. And a student like this who's ready to take it to the next level, then I get into those nuances. Yeah.
So then you're setting them up for down the road.
Exactly. In New York, you have to get a master's degree also. So a lot of them will go on there. Yeah. So here's some preliminary findings. When I've been looking through, we're not done with our detailed analysis yet, but right now, what are they noticing? They are hyper-focused on behavior and classroom management. So they are pointing out every time where they got the students' attention, where they were redirecting off-task behaviors, managing students on phones and side talking, which is part of teaching, right? So that's good. I think those are probably the easier things to see, though, right? They're able to point those out or point out when they didn't do it. We give them just as much credit if they didn't do it well, and instead reflect on what they could have done instead. So we give them the same kind of credit either way. So we did find that this is every single person that I analyzed focused a lot on behavior. Knowing who's in my education department, who my faculty are, every single person has a special ed background in addition to general education. Some are only special ed. So depending on who they had for their courses, also they may have like more focus towards behavior. I'm probably the more constructivist person in the department. So if they had me, I'm finding if they had me for a particular class, they're probably more likely to talk about other things besides this. It just depends on, who they've had throughout their program. They notice a lot of formative assessment opportunities and the way they're giving feedback to students. I'm not finding, so like they talk about, here's where I had checks for understanding to make sure the students were with me. Here's some worksheets or organizers. I asked a lot of questions throughout the lesson. So they're noticing those things, which is a good entry level point to be. But what I noticed is they're very limited discussion on those questioning strategies. So this is something now as faculty, we do internal PD every summer. We're talking about how do we amp up these discussion strategies? How do we move them up beyond that level one? I ask a question, they have one definitive answer, discourse. We want true discourse. We want how we get it to level 2, level 3 discourse. Get all of our students talking. So now that I see this, we're talking about that. How do we bring it into our classes? Am I modeling that enough in my class to make sure that they know what that looks like in practice? So they notice a lot. They talk about student engagement a lot. We talk about student engagement a lot. But they sometimes what they call student engagement, I don't know that we always say. They assume because they played a video, the students were all so engaged because I played a video, right? Okay, well, you caught their attention. Maybe it was interesting, had fun music, but like, again, we're seeing things they're talking about. I let them connect to the lessons. I ask questions. I allow for student choice. But I'm not seeing a huge range in engagement strategies. That's showing us that we need to probably amp that up more and talk about how do we identify, are we identifying them when we're doing them in classes? How do they know what they look like and how to see them in action? Where we're seeing limited here, when they talk about content in their debriefs, they're talking about like their clarity of explanation. So again, very teacher directed, the explicit piece, which is an important piece. That they understand that they're using multiple representations and visuals. They are giving students a chance to explain their thinking. But in terms of what we're not really seeing a lot of, even our math and science teachers, not seeing a lot of inquiry yet. Both of them, when I met with both of them to talk, who graduated this year, and they're like, yeah, we did inquiry. The science teacher did a lot more inquiry than the math teacher. The math teacher really felt in the box. It's whatever that school was doing was what he felt like locked into. So it just gives us more opportunity to say, okay, we need to do better with this because I'm not seeing it yet in practice. They're reflecting well, but I'm not yet seeing it in practice. I'm going to shift now, just kind of looking at the time. One of the new features that Vosaic has that I'm really excited about, and we're just diving into it, is they have this AI mate. So if you looked at the top, I showed before how you can toggle back and forth between things, form, moments, or what they tag, the transcript, which is what's used to create the closed captioning. And now they have this new AI mate. So I'm going to actually I'm going to pick the science student this time. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So if I clicked on AI mate, it does a few things. Let me kind of zoom in here to the side. It automatically starts with a report. It's actually analyzing the transcript behind the video. And does a few things. It kind of gives a little summary of what the AI saw from that. It gives a little percentage of teacher talk time versus student talk time. So I'm looking at it, and honestly, 60-40, that's probably one of the best we're ever going to have with our students right now. They are heavy. When I'm seeing all this explosive instruction, I'm seeing heavy teacher talk time. Is this perfect? No, but it's a good, quick indicator to say, hey, let's aim for your next lesson. Let's try to get this up so the students are doing more of the talking. Can you get student talk time higher than your talk time in these lessons? It also just pulls up some different moments to review based on just what's out there in the field. And honestly, a lot of times these moments are pretty high quality. They're not all perfect. Some of them, I kind of use them as a starting off point when I'm looking at this as the supervisor. So here it says, the teacher introduces the science experiment with bath bombs and explains the activity to the student. So here's a moment you may want to review. It also timestamps it, and I can click on it, and it pulls up that moment over here in the video, so I can go ahead and watch that moment. So it gives a few other pieces. It provides instructions. They engage in casual conversation. Gives some general suggestions as a starting point. Hey, the teacher can consider incorporating more open-ended questions. So a lot of closed-ended questions that she was asking. And it even makes an attempt to cite some research. And honestly, it's a starting point for the students. Right now, we didn't toggle this on for the students to start using. We were only having the supervisor, and I only pulled it up at some debriefs with them. Next year, I'm going to turn on the feature for the students too, and we're going to try to provide some instruction and guidance in how they can use it as a starting point to look at their videos. So it's going to be interesting. Again, it's not perfect. It looks like it did the transcript in 2 parts. So the second part, the student talk time was a lot higher. Second half of the video, they were doing experiments. So you can see we've got 75% almost of student talk time. Now, that's not it. That's just the summary page. Now they have some preset prompts. You can work with Vosaic to put your own preset prompts in here. So he's Amir, who's the company who's here today. he has put in a few for me, like we talked about, okay, summarize the video, classroom management techniques we asked about Danielson domains. I don't know why it's not showing me all of them right now. Oh, because I'm zoomed in. There we go. We have which 5 practices for math discussions. We have that as a preset prompt. So if I clicked that, now this is a science lesson, but it's going to still pull up those 5 practices. So it found moments where it thought there was anticipating, monitoring, selecting. It highlighted a few of those examples. It also has a few places where you can add a custom prompt. So you can type in whatever you want. I think I typed in like show parts of the lesson where the teacher used inquiry. I'm going to click go. And it's pulling out timestamps where it thinks the teacher is using some inquiry and why. So it says, the teacher instructs the students to write down what they notice and wonder as they observe bath bombs. So if I want to go see that, I can click on that moment and it'll pull it up over here in the video where she starts talking about it. Yeah.
Does the student know that the feedback they might be providing was AI generated?
So the only students I've tried this with are the math and the science student that I met with, and I pull up the AI make with them. So we looked at it together. So they knew that I was looking at there. I said, what does this tell me? What is it not telling me? What is it, so from my perspective, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what the AI is seeing. What I was more trying to get their feedback on, do you think this would be useful for you as you did your reflections as a starting point? I'm going to tell you right now, it's not all perfectly accurate.
Do they have access to it?
They will next year. So this, we have a choice. When you have Vosaic, I can choose to turn it on for different roles, on and off for different projects. This year, I only had it on for evaluators. So I wanted to just test the waters this semester with it.
So I'm wondering what your students would say about, the feedback was AI generated. It wasn't genuine by the evaluators themselves, which I love all those things that I don't or may not think about while I'm at conservation.
So yeah. Especially when you can talk as a department and what are some of the prompts I may want to have already in there, as drop down.
Some that are not working.
Yeah, and right. And I think over time, I've already seen an improvement in what comes out of those prompts in the last 3 months since I started using it. I don't know what the 2 students I talked to were both really excited about it, and they would love to try it on their own to use it. I think AI, just like any other form, you have to have honest discussions with your students. I'm generally, I don't want to put everyone in my department in the same box, but I generally am of the mindset that AI is not going anywhere. I need to teach you the ethics and responsibility around using it. What are the limitations of using it? Are there ethical, considerations, things like that. So for them, we can have those conversations this way too. So we're still brainstorming how we're going to introduce this to the students. Maybe we won't do it for their first placement. I probably won't do it for the early students, but maybe in student teaching, and maybe not until placement 2, right? So let's see what you do in placement 1, and now, then I might be able to also get their feedback on what was it like doing it without versus with. Researcher mind too.
And I'm wondering, are we going to have an opportunity to ask inquiry questions, like how much, how long?
That's a good question. So a lot of these pieces, one of the things I know Vosaic said that they're working on, a lot of people ask for more analytic type questions, and I think those are under the works. I don't want to say anything though, because I don't work for the company, so I don't know how far along they are, but I said, it'd be nice for me to know, if you wanted to work with them, say, I would really love to know calculating duration of beyond just student talk time and teacher talk time. Is there a way to generate that with prompting? That would be something to ask them. I think they said they're working with a few different schools who are interested in a few different pieces for research. What am I looking for?
If it was just one student that talked the whole time.
Right. Student one. Because as the technology gets better, I think it's going to get better to see that. But let's see. Again, that's a good conversation to have with the students too, right? So that teacher talk time, student talk time, was it everyone? And I have to watch the video to tell. We need the human side really for that evaluation.
How long are you having the video? The videos need to be X amount of time. Just AI may decide. Your students have to send in a video that's how long?
We do not give them time. We ask them to film an entire lesson, beginning to end. So we do that because we have early childhood programs, and there's developmental appropriateness. So an early childhood lesson may be 15 minutes from beginning to end, and it never will be longer, and it shouldn't be longer we have students who are in infants and toddlers placements. So please don't give me an hour-long lesson that you were teaching to infants and toddlers, right? So we don't give it. We don't our students all want numbers. They also ask us, how many tags do I need? And I drive them crazy because I will never tell them a number. I don't want a number. My rubric says ample tags to demonstrate proficiency of this, right? And and some people can do it in more, some people can do it in fewer. It depends on what you did. I'm looking for variety. I'm looking for proficiency with that.
I didn't know if you were submitting the feedback for observations for like your education association.
Oh, for like accreditation?
Yeah.
So
we have to have 45 minutes long video observations with feedback to count.
got it. I didn't know. Who dictate that? I don't know any team.
The state of Texas.
Oh, yeah, no, it's something like that. No. So you could do that with if you want to. Like in New York, it's up to the institutions to make those decisions. And so like for same thing with like our TPA that we have instead of Ed TPA, that's our choice what they want to do. So we tell them they can use as many videos as they want. In fact, I encourage you to edit and show me a video reel of you doing these things well, because that's one thing Ed TPA didn't let them do. So there was a lot of like restrictions on it. I'm big into no editing, and it'll get kicked back if there was any editing. I was like, who cares? I mean, there's research to show too that it's actually better. Like if you can distinguish that didn't go well and this one did, and you want to put it together to show me, great. That shows me you understand what teaching should look like. So we like the flexibility of it. But again, I understand that you might be under more restrictions. So you could absolutely, there's no limit to how long the video can be, but just like anything else, videos take a long time to upload. So longer videos.
So is it housed somewhere, or do they have to upload it? You said these platforms we use.
So everything's stored in Vosaic. They use Amazon Web Services. So we have all of their privacy agreements, and everything is where all the data is stored from there. We own the data.
Citizen of use.
So most of the students are just using their phones and the Vosaic app. The app works on iPhones. If not, you can just open Vosaic itself. If you use the app, it optimizes the video size right away. Otherwise, we tell them, maybe play with the video size settings on your phone. You don't need to record this in 4K. Not necessary. It's just going to take forever to convert when you're trying to upload.
And the sound quality's good.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, their phones. We used to, like a long time ago at Damon, they used swivel because of the things that hang around their neck. And you just don't need that anymore. The technology's gotten so good that I could put my iPhone in the corner of that room and it's going to pick up everyone. I can hear the students' conversations.
When they lean forward, it swing out, and
then it would come back in, right? Because you just don't need that anymore for most of the time. We also tell students it doesn't have to be a whole class lesson. You can focus on if you're doing like a problem-based learning lesson and you're walking around. Like sometimes the cooperating teacher would be the videographer and kind of walk around to get some of that, like those conversations that are happening with the students too. So I'm looking for nuances of teaching in this as opposed to the big picture classroom. Because again, that's a cooperating teacher's job to talk about the big picture every day.
What about the cost?
So the cost is, it's an interesting model for the cost because you pay per license, but the licenses are not like tied to a specific student. There's like 4 levels of licenses. There's an administrator, which is me. There's educators, which are your instructors. Learners, those are students who need to upload videos. And those 3 are paid models. But they kind of are in a pool of licenses that you buy. And the more licenses you buy, the more it goes down in cost. And so like an annual fee. I want to say however many we buy, somewhere in like the $99 a user. But I say that because early in the program, when I don't have students upload their own videos, it's free to use. So like if I'm, as the educator, putting a video for you to tag and us to look at, it's free for the students to use. And we have single sign-on, so they sign in with their daemon, they're automatically pulled in, and I can put them in groups and share videos with them, and it's free for them to use. So we kind of buy the number of licenses I need for students who will be actively uploading. And it's click a little button for me to shift students between roles so we can kind of share one pool of uploading licenses and everyone else can use the free version. So it's an interesting cost model, but it's easy to use. Like I think they were just telling me about there's some K-12 school districts use this as well. They'll use it for like teacher coaching. And they only buy a handful of paid licenses. And when whoever's doing the coaching at that time, they'll get one of the paid licenses to be able to do their uploading. Once you've done your uploading, you could be moved off of the paid license. So there's a way to kind of buy just what you need.
So the swivel is free. Is it Vosaic or Damon? I'm sorry, I'm confused about which is the free, like, what's the difference?
So Swivel's not free. Swivel's only free for certain pieces of
the app.
The app is free, but you can't, like the uploading your video storage, it's a paid. It's paid also.
They use Swivel, just use share the link, watch the video. That's all. But in terms of the
Gotcha. All the video tagging. I know we were paying like $7,000 a year for Swivel when we used it. Yeah, so that's also not free. So Damon, like we do buy licenses at Damon because I use it across all of our programs. But I think we buy like 60-ish licenses a year across all of our different programs because not all of them need to use it. So, but all of our students are using it in all their classes. So they only get the paid licenses when they need them. There was another question you were asking. You said you weren't sure if it was Damon or Vosaic. So Vosaic had different levels of license. There is a free license that's, you just can't upload your own videos. So the students, if you just wanted to use this of like, let me get the funky way, I'm going to buy like a couple of licenses for my faculty. They can use it for their research. They could use it for their classes. They upload videos. Let's see if how we take to this. The students can use it for free and they can tag the videos. Without a lot, that's how I started using it. I only had a handful. I wrote like mini grants to get a few licenses for myself. And that's how I was using it at ISU in my methods class. I was putting example teaching videos and we'd watch them for assignments and they tag them and things like that. Yeah.
So how long you have access then to them, to whatever videos have been uploaded?
So the videos, we have our own internal procedures where we delete them because we don't have video permission to like save them for a long time. But it's just, you have a storage. So as long as you have accounts, the videos aren't going anywhere. So it's not like the students get kicked out either because of the free viewer mode. You know, I have student teachers from last year. I had one who was like, I'm doing this project in grad school. I really want to look at this thing. I want to record myself. Can I just record myself and tag a video? I was like, I'm not this. I had an extra license. I was like, sure. Here you go. Put it in there. It's stored on Damon's, it's on Amazon Web Services, but it's part of Damon's account. It was a student we were pretty close with. So sometimes the students just want to do it more. Some of them really take to this and like it. Others would prefer not.
Is it for the research? Is that for, because I was wondering, I'm in math myself, so I don't do it, but I have colleagues who need to interview students and they need check response types and all this.
Sure. I mean, so you can build that form to be whatever you want to be. You can add to it. You can add labels on those moments and like, again, print out kind of do your analysis that way. It's not like an in vivo. It doesn't have it doesn't look for the themes in there. But when we do our focus groups at the end of the year, I use this also. So I have different faculty look for themes in there and we all just tag moments and we look for common themes across it. So yeah, it's nice because it's attached to the video evidence itself. It's not just a note on a video.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah. Any other questions? How did I do on time? Not too bad. I was a little worried. I'm like, no, sorry, end of the day. But if you wanted to learn more about it, again, I don't work for the company. I've just been using this since 2018. I think that's around when they started with this web-based tool. They used to have a really robust coding software that I used to use. I did it for my dissertation. I built code windows and that's how I tagged my videos. But I think they were finding that wasn't as used as much in the education world. So they went with a platform that was more streamlined and online. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And my context is on that first slide. I can go back. If you didn't get the slides, let me actually go back to the beginning here. Feel free to ask me questions. Honestly, I find that a lot of people start using it and just how did you handle this logistical thing? Just because I've been doing it for a while now. So, no. Yeah, this is my slides. And on the first slide, you'll find my contact info.